Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I've got another build for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition for you. This one is called the Cursed Ronin. My name is Nathan and this is one I'm really excited about to share. Might be one of my best ever so far. So let's get started. This character is basically going to be kind of like this cursed samurai type character, and this character is going to be super fun and exciting, and again I'm really excited to share this build in particular. So here is our agenda for today. I'll introduce and talk about the build concepts. I'll talk about level 1, levels 2 through 6, 7 through 9, 10 through 13, 14 through 17, and all of that before summarizing. And we will be doing a damage report at each of those key thresholds, levels 6, 9, 13, and 17, where we'll kind of compare our output and talk about what the characters are doing and their overall abilities. So, introduction and build concept. What is this character going to be about? So we are going to be a melee burst damage dealer who's going to be using a great sword. Importantly, this means that we're not going to be using the famed Polearm Master Great Weapon Master combo that a lot of fighters are known for. But there's very specific reasons for this, and this is one of the things that makes this character so powerful. Is that one of the reasons that, like the fact that we're not doing that. This character is also going to have excellent hit accuracy even when Great Weapon Master is on. I found a way to enable us to make our two-handed attacks with very high accuracy, and that's going to be something that's going to be key to this build. We also are going to have a very high rate of crits with the ability to spend our somewhat limited spell slots for even more damage. So this is going to be a bit of a crit fishing build, and we're going to try to take advantage of that to pump in high damage smites with spell slots. This character is also going to be a great launching point for role-playing and potentially even a side quest. One of the things with this character is I'm envisioning that you're going to be on some kind of quest to find a sword. It might be your family's sword that was stolen by a villain and you're out to avenge them and recover it. It might be some kind of sword of legend that is stored in a secluded temple or dungeon or shrine somewhere that you want to recover. This is something that you'll talk with your DM about, and I'm not going to assume that you get any kind of magic weapon when I do the damage numbers, but it's a great way to kind of introduce your character's story into the overall arc, and I'll talk more about that throughout the build. For the books that you'll need for this character are going to be the Player's Handbook, Zenithar's Guide to Everything, and Tasha's Cauldron of Everything for a few spells. Now, one of the cool things about this character is the core of the build, in between the race, the primary spell options, and all the subclasses are actually doable with just the Player's Handbook and Zenithar's. That's something that is pretty cool about this build in particular. So, at level 1, we are going to be a fighter. This gives us proficiency with heavy armor and shields, as well as martial weapons, and proficiency in strength saves and constitution saves. Kind of where this character starts from, their background. I would imagine you're some kind of noble, like from a noble family. Maybe your family got killed and you're out to avenge them, but for whatever reason, you are basically a sword for hire, kind of finding your way, earning money, learning new skills until you can kind of get to that point where you can find this sword that you're after and maybe avenge your family or whatever your character's particular goals happen to be. But for our race, I'm going to be using Half Elf again for this build. I really like this race, not only for the stats, but they also have a bunch of nice kind of utility racial features. They can learn skills or have higher speed if you use the Sword Coast's Adventurer's Guide variants. But I will say, you can use the Shed Archive or Eladrin from the Monsters of the Multiverse book. Those are both very powerful races. But the key thing is you need to be an elf for this build. It can be any kind of elf, but I'm using Half Elf today. So for our starting ability scores, we're going to be using Point Buy. I'm going to do a 15 plus 1 in Strength, a 13 plus 1 in Constitution for a total of 14, a 12 Wisdom, and a 15 Charisma plus 2. Now, if you are not using the Half Elf and you're using one of those other kinds of elves who has a plus 2 and a plus 1, I would do a natural 14 Constitution, and then that will drop your Wisdom to 12. You don't particularly need the high wisdom on this character, but it'll be nice to actually take advantage of some of the features that we're going to be using. So uh, that's why I have it there and not the higher constitution. As a first level fighter, we get our fighting style, and I'm going to be using great weapon fighting on this character. What this does is when you roll damage with your weapons damage dice, you can re-roll any dice that show a 1 or a 2. And this isn't that huge of a damage increase. It's better on a great sword than other things because they have the smaller damage dice and more of them, the 2d6. It's an increase of about 1.3 points of damage on average with a great sword. If you wanted to use something like defense or superior technique or something like that, you absolutely could, but I'm going to be using great weapon fighting on this version of the build. You also get the second wind feature here, which as a bonus action once per short rest, lets you heal a number of hit points equal to 1d10 plus your fighter level. This is a nice utility heal, and since this character is actually going to end up being mostly fighter, this will be a reasonable amount of hit points. Now, as a first level fighter, our starting hit points are 10 plus our constitution modifier for a total of 12. For our starting equipment on this character, again, like in a lot of my recent builds, we're going to be taking the items offered by our class. Generally, martial equipment is kind of expensive, and if you're doing gold buy, you're not going to get as much, especially if the items you need are specifically offered by your class. So we're going to be using, we're going to be taking chainmail, we're going to be taking a greatsword, and then you can either take a shield or a second martial weapon. Maybe you want a glaive or something like that. Kind of whatever fits your concept. And this character is ideally going to be wearing the heaviest heavy armor that you can, like plate ideally. And you're going to be using a great sword pretty much for most of your career. You could also be using a maul, something that has those 2d6 base damage and is two-handed is really what you want. All right, at level 2, we are going to be taking a second level 1 fighter, and this gives us the action surge feature. Now, this feature, once per short rest, lets us take an extra action on our turn. And you get all the benefits of that action. The main thing that we're going to be using this for is to take the attack action again. And once we're at level 5 and beyond fighter, and potentially an 11th level fighter, this means that, we can take all of the attacks that go with that attack action. So once we're level 5, this will let us make 4 attacks in a round, and once we're an 11th level fighter, this will let us make 6 attacks in a round. So this is one of the key things to pretty much just about all burst builds, because this basically lets you double your attacks. And yeah, this is a great feature to have. Now at level 3, we get our martial archetype, our fighter subclass. And on this character, I am going with Samurai. This is a subclass out of Xanathars. It gives us a bonus proficiency in a skill where you can learn a language. And then we get the fighting spirit feature. Now what this does as a bonus action on our turn, we get 5 temporary hit points, and we get advantage on all of our attacks for the rest of the turn. And we can use this 3 times per long rest. Now, we're going to be using this a lot early, and one of the great things about this, again, is its unconditional advantage. You don't need to get a creature prone. You don't need to worry about how large they are to try to get them prone. You don't need to worry about them being able to see you or anything like that. This just gives you advantage, and it's going to be one of the core things to our kit, especially here at the beginning. And of course, with our character concept, I wanted to make a samurai for this character, and this just fits the story so perfectly. Yeah, you've been picking up more skills at this point, and you've started to learn some of that discipline that comes with your family's heritage of fighting and being honorable. At level 4, we are a 4th level fighter, and we get our first ability score increase or feat, and we're going to be taking the Great Weapon Master feat. Now this character is actually going to be able to get pretty much use out of everything this feat offers, so let's go into a little bit of detail here. So the first thing that this feat offers is if we kill an enemy or score a critical hit on our turn, we can use a bonus action to make another weapon attack. Now, as I said, this build is eventually going to have a very good critical rate, so we're going to be able to get advantage of that bonus action later on. Now, this does overlap with our bonus action used to get advantage with the fighting spirit. So we ultimately will want to find another way to get advantage beyond the fighting spirit, but having that tool around is going to be really useful. The other thing that this does, and this is one of the reasons why this is one of the best feats in the game for damage output, is you can take a -5 penalty to your attack roll to get a +10 bonus to your damage roll. And again, all these features all work as long as you're using a heavy weapon in two hands. So basically we can reduce our hit chance to do more damage, but because we're going to be attacking with advantage on this character pretty much all the time, during our burst round at least, we can largely negate this penalty. Now at level 5 we're going to be a 5th level fighter and we get the extra attack feature. This means that on our turn when we take the attack action we can now attack twice. So again, this means with action surge we can attack twice again for a total of 4 attacks. And our martial prowess is growing at this point, and we are very strong. A 5th level fighter is honestly one of the best 5th level characters in the game, and we are doing very well here. Now, at level 6, I am going to be taking a level in Warlock. Now, the point when you take this Warlock level, I would say is largely going to be a reflection of when you kind of complete your initial side quest and find this sword. Now, for whatever reason, this sword is connected to some kind of eldritch entity or something like that, and it's going to kind of serve as a conduit for a Warlock pact. Maybe they're going to help you avenge your family or defeat that key villain, that kind of thing. Now, I'm waiting to take this Warlock level until level 6. You could take it before then, anywhere between levels 2 and 6 is when I would want this. And I would take this level at some point after the conclusion of that initial quest to get your special sword. And again, it doesn't have to be a magic sword, and I'm not going to be assuming it is. But perhaps once you have that sword, your patron comes to you in a dream to make the pact, or shortly before you find the sword, that kind of thing. But however that story happens to go, we are going to be taking a Warlock level here, and our patron is going to be the Hexblade. This gives us an expanded spell list, which includes at this level spells of Shield and Wrathful Smite. So we can pick those if we want as Warlock spells. We also get the Hexblade's Curse feature here, and this is going to be one of our key things to our damage output. What this does is, as a bonus action, once per short or long rest, we can curse a target. While that target is cursed, we can score a critical hit against them on a 19 or a 20. We deal extra damage to them each time we damage them, and this extra damage is equal to our proficiency bonus. And if they die while under the curse, we recover a number of hit points equal to our charisma modifier plus our Warlock level. And again, the main thing that we're here for is that expended crit rate and the extra damage on hit. We also get the Hex Warrior feature here. This gives us proficiency in martial weapons, shields, and medium armor, which we already had all of that. It also lets us bond with a weapon that lacks the two-handed I think lacks the heavy property at this point and the two-handed property. And when we do that, we can make our attacks with that weapon with our charisma modifier instead of our strength or dexterity. Now, we can't use this with our greatsword at this point, so it's not really doing anything, but eventually we will. And as you can see currently, we have a 16 strength and a 17 charisma, so our attacks are going to be using our strength and their modifiers are the same, so that's not a big deal at this point. We also get that Pact Magic feature here. This is the Warlock's casting. They have a very small number of spell slots, but they get all their spell slots back on a short rest. That's the main difference between Warlocks and other casters. So we get to know 2 cantrips at this level, and we're going to be taking Eldritch Blast, and your choice of Booming Blade or Green Flame Blade. Now, I'm going to be taking Booming Blade. It is the better cantrip for what this character is going to be doing eventually, and we will be using it eventually. But you can pick either one you want at this point. Just make sure you have Booming Blade by some of the later levels. We have 1 first level spell slot at this point, and we get to know 2 spells of first level. I would learn Hex and Shield. Hex is going to be kind of a backup thing to use when we don't have our Hexblade's Curse, or perhaps there's other targets that you want to have. It's just a good tool at this level to have for some extra damage. Now, at level 6, it is time for our first damage report. So what is this character doing in combat? So in the first round, we're going to cast our Hexblade's Curse on the target of our ire, and we're going to run in and attack them twice. Then at any point after that, we're going to use our Fighting Spirit with our bonus action to get advantage on all of our attacks. Then we're going to attack twice, action surge, and attack twice again. Now, in terms of damage, we're going to be making 4 greatsword attacks with great weapon fighting, and we'll have a +6 or a +1 to hit with great weapon master. We will have advantage on all of those attacks, and we will be doing 2d6 +6 or +16 if we have great weapon master on. So that damage again is +3 from strength, +3 from our proficiency modifier due to Hexblade's curse, and +10 from great weapon master. So what is our average damage then? So against an enemy with an armor class of 10 and +0 to their saves, we would be doing 88.1 damage on average, and against an enemy with an AC of 15 and +5 to their saves, we would be doing an average of 62.5 damage in our burst round. Now, this is very good damage. This is among the best that I've had at this level. Among all of my burst builds, it loses pretty hard to that build last week, the hedge trimmer, that had some asterisks. That build was doing like 100 damage at level 6, but this is very good. We are a little bit behind our baseline fighter burst builds, but those builds are using variant human and are pretty stacked at this point in terms of feats. But don't worry, this build is going to take off like a rocket. So at level 7, we are going to be continuing taking Warlock levels, and we will for some time. We are going to be kind of leaning into the magic that our patron is offering us and this power that's going to be channeled through this sword that we've found. So at level 2, Warlocks get their Eldritch Invocations. These are kind of passive abilities that you get to enhance yourself, and we're going to be taking Agonizing Blast and Devil's Sight. Agonizing Blast lets us add our Charisma modifier to the damage rolls of our Eldritch Blast, which at this point is going to be firing 2 beams. So that's going to be adding potentially 6 damage if both of them hit. Now, importantly, this is just a good ranged option, and we're not going to be using it just yet, but it's good to have around. And then we're going to be taking Devil's Sight. So what this does is it gives you dark vision out to a range of 120 feet, and you can see normally in both magical and non-magical darkness. Now, we're going to be using this for a classic spell combination later on, and I will get to that very soon. Also, as a second level Warlock, we get our second spell slot, and we get to learn another spell. I would probably learn the Armor of Agathis spell here. It's just a good kind of protection, temporary hit point spell to have around. But at level 8, we are again continuing our Warlock adventure, and we get our Pact boon, which is going to be Pact of the Blade. Now, one of the specific things about Hex Warrior, our feature from being a Hexblade, is that if we later acquire the Pact of the Blade feature, the benefits of Hex Warrior will extend to any weapon we conjure with Pact of the Blade, regardless of what its properties are. So this means that we can now use our Charisma modifier to make our attack and damage rolls with our Greatsword because we have Pact of the Blade. Now, it doesn't matter at this point which one we're using, again, because the modifiers are the same, but next level it will. Now, invocations-wise, we can swap our invocations out each time we gain a Warlock level, and we're going to swap out Agonizing Blast for Improved Pact Weapon. What this does is it makes it so that your Pact Weapon, which is going to be our Greatsword at this point, counts as a magical +1 weapon if it didn't already have that +1 bonus. We can use it as our spellcasting focus, and it expands what weapons it can be to some of the two-handed ranged ones. But we're mainly using this for the +1 to hit and damage. Now, don't make this swap if you already have a +1 magic weapon. And by all means, your DM may give you a +1 greatsword of some kind. We're going to be flavoring the greatsword as like an odachi, which is the big samurai long like katana type thing. That's how I would do it, at least. But if your DM has given you this +1 greatsword or +1 greatsword analog, you don't need to take this invocation. But because I'm assuming that we're not going to have a magic weapon, because I don't assume that for any of my builds, I'm going to be taking this invocation here. We're going to be getting Agonizing Blast back later, but for the sake of the math, I'm going to be taking Improved Pact Weapon here. As for our spells, our slots increase in level from 1st to 2nd, and we get to learn our 1st, 2nd level spell, and we're going to be learning the Darkness spell. Now, what this spell does, it lets you create a bubble of darkness, and if you center it, if you put it on an object, it will move with that object. So you can cast this on yourself or on your sword, something like that, and you'll have this, I think it's a 15-foot radius sphere of darkness that will move with you. Now, importantly, we can see through the darkness because of our Devil's Sight invocation, but enemies won't be able to see us, which means that we will have advantage on our attacks and they'll have disadvantage to hit us. And now we have created our method of having advantage reliably without having to spend our bonus action. Now, it's important to note that situationally, this may not be the thing that you want to do. Your allies won't be able to see in the darkness either, or see through it, so they won't be able to see your target. And so if you're in kind of a close quarters situation where there's not a lot of room to move, like say a cramped room in a dungeon, and that means that if you were to cast this spell, you'd basically make it so nobody could see, don't do that. That will be very detrimental to the party. But for the sake of my math going forward, I'm going to be assuming that we're going to be using this. But use your brain and use your tactics. You've got the fighting spirit available for situations where darkness would not be practical for the rest of your party. Now, at level 9, again, we are continuing drawing power from our Warlock Pact, and we get our first ability score increase or feat. And we are going to be taking the Elven Accuracy feat. And because we are a half-elf, we qualify for this. It gives a +1 bonus to either Dexterity, Intelligence, Charisma, or Wisdom. We're going to be using this to bump our Charisma to 18. And importantly, what it also does is if we make an attack using Dexterity, Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma, and we have advantage on the attack, we can re-roll one of the d20s. This essentially means we have what I call super advantage, where we can essentially roll 3 d20s and take the best result. This means that we're going to be super duper accurate even when we have our Great Weapon Master going. And normally you wouldn't be able to use this with a Greatsword because it requires attacks with one of those 4 stats. But because we've shifted our attack set into Charisma with the Hex Warrior plus Pact of the Blade combo, we can now use this with our Charisma with our 2-handed melee weapon. So this is super exciting, super fantastic, and one of the core concepts I was wanting to have when I was putting this build together. Now, for our spells, we get another cantrip at this level. Pick whatever you want. If you don't have Booming Blade yet, I would grab that now. But otherwise, kind of pick what you want. We haven't gained any new spell slots, but we do get to learn another 2nd level spell here. And I would personally learn Misty Step. There are some other really good options like Hold a Person, which if you can get the enemy to fail their save on that, they'll be paralyzed, which means automatic crits. Very powerful, a good thing to have around if you want that. But I think thematically, I kind of envision this character now in their samurai plate armor with their big odachi. The ability to teleport around is going to be really cool and really thematic and very fun. But at level 9, it is time for our next damage report. So what has changed since last time? We've gained the Pact of the Blade feature, which combining with Hex Warrior, this will let us attack with our Charisma. We have Elven Accuracy to get that super advantage on our attacks with Charisma. Our Charisma is 18, which is going to mean +4 to hit and +4 to damage from our attributes. We've gained the improved Pact Weapon feature, so this is another +1 to hit and damage. We've got the Darkness plus Devil's Sight combo going on to give us advantage, so long as the enemies also can't see in the darkness or have other ways to sense us. And that, importantly, that doesn't use our bonus action on our turn. And our proficiency modifier has increased to 4, which will increase the damage from our Hexblade's curse. So, what are our tactics now? So, in the first round, we're going to cast Hexblade's curse with our bonus action, and then cast darkness on ourselves and potentially run in. If the space allows it, you might want to just stand off to the side in your bubble of darkness alone, so that the enemies, again, can't attack you. Will have trouble attacking you, but you won't block your party's vision. So I kind of imagine this as we pronounce this foul curse in a dark language, and then we vanish in a cloud of darkness. But at any point after you've done your setup turn, we are going to run in, attack twice, action surge, attack twice again, and then if we got a crit on any of those 4 attacks, we're going to use our bonus action to make that extra attack that we get from Great Weapon Master. So we have a potential of having 5 attacks at this point. So what does that mean for our damage output? So we have our 4 attacks with our Great Sword with our Great Weapon fighting style. It's going to be a +9 or a +4 to hit if we have Great Weapon Master on with our super Elven Accuracy advantage. doing 2d6 plus 9 or plus 19 damage with Great Weapon Master on. And because we crit on a 19 or 20, and we get to roll 3d20s per attack, our chance of getting at least one crit across 4 attacks is 71.8%. That's pretty darn good. I think, respectively, any one of our attacks is about a 27% crit chance. Now that plus 19 to damage is plus 4 from Charisma, plus 4 from Proficiency, and plus 10 from Great Weapon Master, and a plus 1 on top from Improved Packed Weapon. So we potentially have a 5th attack if we get that, if that 72% of the time we got the crit. So what does this mean for our damage output? So against a target with an armor class of 10, we were doing 137.6 points of damage. And against a target with an armor class of 16, it would be 118.1 damage. And as you can see, the gap is kind of closed between those. We've gained 49.5 damage against the low armor class, an increase of 56%, and 55.6 damage against the higher armor class, which is an increase of 89%. And we are doing very well at this level. For a level 9 character, this is pretty darn good damage. We're a little bit behind some of the other builds I've made to this point, but we are doing very, very well, and these numbers are quite respectable. The fact that you have super advantage with Great Weapon Master means you're going to be pumping out a lot of damage. The damage will be a little lower if you can't use Darkness, and you got to use your Samurai Fighting Spirit instead. But of course, the advantage of that is you don't block your party's view. But we're going to keep getting stronger from this point, so let's see what that's going to look like. So at level 10, we are going to be a Warlock 5. We are continuing to draw more and more power out of this sword and our pact with our Hexblade patron. Now, as a 5th level Warlock, we get another invocation, and we're going to be taking the Eldritch Smite invocation. What this does is when we hit an enemy with an attack on our turn, importantly, it can be a ranged or a melee attack, but we're making melee attacks. We can spend a spell slot to deal force damage to the target. The amount of damage is 1d8 plus another d8 for each level of the spell slot we expend. And as a 5th level Warlock, our spell slots are 3rd level, so this is going to be 4d8 force damage. And we also get to knock the target prone if it's huge or larger. So our strategy now is we're going to be using this, and we're going to use it hopefully on a crit. And like I said, we have a 71.8% chance of getting at least one crit, so it's fairly likely that you're going to be able to drop 8d8 smite damage on an enemy, because you get to pick one if you smite after you hit. So this is going to enable us to convert our other spell slot that we didn't use to cast Darkness into even more damage. Now, we get to learn another spell at this level. Honestly, I would pick your favorite. There's a lot of good ones here. Spells like Counterspell, Remove Curse, Fear, or Fly, which are kind of the ones that I would pick. I imagine being a flying samurai or being able to put the fear of our power in our enemies would be really thematic and really fun. And then importantly, I would retrain Hex into the Spirit Shroud spell here. They both take a bonus action to cast, and Spirit Shroud is just better at this point, so I would take that one. Now, at level 11, we have drawn as much power as we could from our Hexblade, and we are going back to kind of our more martial roots, and we're going to be taking fighter levels from here on out. Now, as a fighter level 6, we get another ability score increase or feat, and I'm going to be bumping our charisma up to 20. This will help with all of our attack and damage rolls, help with our spell save DC, and having it capped at this point, honestly, just feels great. At level 12, we're going to be a fighter 7, and this means we get our next samurai feature, which is Elegant Courier. What this does is it lets us add our wisdom modifier to our persuasion checks, so that's a +1. That's not really that great, but it also makes us proficient in wisdom saves if we weren't already, and if we were already proficient in wisdom saves, it would give us intelligence or charisma, our choice. Now, the cool thing here, most fighter subclasses don't get something that's really that great at level 7, and this is a great defensive feature. We are now proficient in both Constitution and Wisdom saves, which are some of the most important saves in the game. And having that save proficiency will just help our defenses. So that's great. At level 13, we are going to be a Fighter 8, which means another ability score increase or feat, and we are going to be taking the Meta Magic Adept feat here. This gives us 2 sorcery points that come back on a long rest, and we also get to learn 2 metamagic options from the sorcerer list, and we can only use these sorcery points for these metamagic options. Now, the one that we want is Quicken Spell. This lets us spend 2 sorcery points to cast a spell as a bonus action. And this is going to let us get a 100% reliable use out of our bonus action rather than that, 71.8% chance to get an extra attack if we got a crit. For our second metamagic option, pick whatever you want. I'd probably take Subtle Spell, the ability to silently cast a spell like Hold Person or something like that if you know it, or maybe even Fear. Would be really fun, very thematic, and just help you set up that ambush combat. Now, importantly, Quicken Spell, this is going to be just a key to our burst round, and it's going to help us just get off that big Nova of damage. All of our other resources for our burst damage reset on a short rest. This one will not, just so take that into account. And if you don't want to lean heavily into the burst aspect of this character, you can absolutely take another feat here. But this one is going to be big for our damage. And speaking of which, it's time for our next damage report. So what has changed since last time? We've gained Eldritch Smite, which is going to be with a 3rd level spell slot for that 4d8 of force damage. Our Charisma is bumped up to 20, and we've gotten Quicken Spell. We have also gained defense and utility options from our spell slots and our class features. So what is our strategy now? Our setup is still the same. We're going to pronounce that vile curse and vanish into darkness. Then in the second round, or at any point after that, we're going to attack twice, action surge, attack twice again. We're going to quicken the Booming Blade cantrip, which at this level adds 2d8 of damage to its own hit. And then if the target moves, which I'm going to assume that they do if they're still alive, they'll take another 3d8 thunder damage. And we're going to also apply our Eldritch Smite, hopefully on a crit. So what is our damage now? So we've got our 4 Great Sword attacks with our Great Weapon Fighting Style. We've got our Booming Blade, again with Great Weapon Fighting Style. That importantly adds the 2d8 thunder damage because we're at least an 11th level character at this point. So with those 5 attacks, we have a cumulative crit chance now of 79.4%. This is our chance to get at least 1 crit on our turn. We've got some damage riders here. We've got that 4d8 of Eldritch Smite, which we're going to try to apply on a crit. And we've also got our Booming Blade extra damage if the target moves. So what is our damage now? We've gained a lot here, and it's going to be a big deal. So against an enemy with an armor class of 10, we would be doing an average of 214.6 damage. And against an enemy with an armor class of 17, it would be 194. And wow, we have broken the 200 barrier at level 13. We've almost beaten it against the higher armor class. And this is really good. There's only a difference of just over 20 points of damage between those numbers. And that is that Elven accuracy doing work. So since last time, we've gained 77 points of damage against the lower armor class for an increase of 56%, and almost 76 points of damage against the higher enemy armor class. This is an increase of 64%. And yeah, we are very, very happy with how we're doing, and guess what? It's going to get better. All right, at level 14, we are going to be a Fighter 9. We get the Indomitable feature once per long rest. This lets us re-roll a saving throw. We have to use the new roll. Like I've said in other builds that focus on Fighter, this feature is okay. It's not that great. So we're just kind of taking it to get through here. At level 15, we're going to be a Fighter 10. This means the temporary hit points we get from our Fighting Spirit increases to 10. And we also get the Tireless Spirit feature here. So what this does is when you roll initiative, so when you start combat, if you don't have any uses of Fighting Spirit left, you get 1 back. So the great thing about this is since we had that 3 per long rest before, you might have been kind of sparing with them. Now you don't have to. You can use them all the time, and you'll always have 1 every combat, which means for those combats that, let's say you've already used your sorcery points from Metamagic Adept, maybe your spell slots are gone, you can still use Tireless Spirit with your Fighting Spirit and make sure that you can still get that turn of advantage attack rolls. And if you're also in one of those situations where you can't cast darkness because of just kind of the layout of the fight, you'll always have fighting spirit, and that's great. Not super impactful, but this is just a great thing to have because it means the core of being a samurai you'll always have access to. Now, level 16 will be a fighter 11, and this means we get our rank 2 extra attack. So when we take the attack action on our turn, we can now attack 3 times. So if we action surge with this, we can now attack 6 times, and a 7th time with that bonus action spell cantrip attack with Quicken Spell. Now, an important thing to add, you may have been thinking, why didn't you cast Eldritch Blast with your bonus action last time in the damage report? And it turns out the damage numbers were actually very close if you had Agonizing Blast, but the Booming Blade wins out by a little bit because of the extra damage that the target would take if they move. But that will change next level, specifically because Booming Blade upgrades to, well, not Booming Blade, Eldritch Blast upgrades to 4 beams. So at level 17, we're going to be a fighter 12, and we get another ability score increase or feat, and I'm going to be taking the Eldritch Adept feat. What this does is it lets you learn an invocation from the Warlock list. If it has prerequisites, you can't take it unless you're a Warlock that meets those prerequisites. The requirements for this one are having the Eldritch Blast cantrip, and we're going to be taking Agonizing Blast here to get it back. Now, if you have a +1 weapon from anything, like a +1 or better, you should honestly be taking a different feat here because you'll already have Agonizing Blast and won't have improved Pact Weapon. You could also take another different invocation here, and there's a lot of really good ones for utility and that kind of thing. But because I'm assuming we don't have that magic weapon, because that's the way I do all of my builds, I'm going to be using this feat here to get Agonizing Blast back. Now, let's see what this does for our damage, because now we're actually going to be using our Quicken Spell to fire off a set of Eldritch Blasts. So it's time for our last and final damage report at level 17. What has changed since last time? We've gained the extra attack rank 2, so that means 3 times 2 is 6 attacks in our burst round. Our proficiency bonus is 6, so that's the extra damage from Hexblade's Curse. Eldritch Blast fires 4 beams now, and we've gotten Agonizing Blast to go on top of it, and we've gotten more defense and utility options from our fighter class. So here's how our plan has changed. Our setup is still the same with our Vile Curse and our Shroud of Darkness on ourself. But then when we do our burst round, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to quicken Eldritch Blast. This is going to fire 4 beams, each doing 1d10 plus 11 damage. So 5 from our charisma and 6 from our proficiency bonus. We're going to attack 3 times, action surge, attack 3 times, and apply that Eldritch Smite somewhere, ideally, again, hopefully on a crit. Now, the reason that we're quickening Eldritch Blast first is Eldritch Smite will probably knock our target prone. That would give us disadvantage on our attacks with our Eldritch Blast, and we don't want that. Now, importantly, because the Eldritch Blast attacks are made with Charisma, we will get the super advantage with them because of Elven Accuracy, which is great. So, what are kind of our attacks now? We've got 6 Great Sword attacks with our Great Weapon Fighting Style with super advantage. We've got 4 Eldritch Blast attacks, again with super advantage. Those are each, again, dealing 1d10 plus 11 damage. We've got a cumulative crit chance for our attacks, not our Eldritch Blast, of 85% at this point. Again, the individual crit chance is right around 27%, and this cumulative crit chance is our chance of getting at least 1 crit. We will be applying Eldritch Smite on one of our melee attacks, and again, drop it on the first crit that you get. So, what is our damage now? Against an enemy with an armor class of 10, we would be doing 301.5 damage. We've broken the 300 mark. This is the highest I've ever gotten on any build at this point. And against an enemy with an armor class of 18, it would be 277. And again, this is the highest I've gotten against this damage target at this level. So since last time, this is an increase of about 87 points in the lower case, or 40%, and 83 points, or 43%, in the higher armor class case. We have not stopped scaling. We are continuing to scale very well, and the power spikes on this build are pretty darn fantastic. And yeah, I'm very, very pleased with where the damage numbers on this character are. And yeah, this character is super duper powerful in terms of being able to pump out burst damage. You'll even be able to continue to pump out good damage even after your burst round because you'll have that advantage thanks to darkness. And you'll just have those 3 attacks per round. If you get a crit, you get to make another attack because of Great Weapon Master. And yeah, overall, you're just very happy. Most of your resources, like your spell slots and your action surge, come back on a short rest. So assuming you get a short rest after each combat, you're basically going to be able to pick the most difficult enemy, pronounce your vile curse on them, and then run in your cloud of darkness and chop them into teeny tiny pieces. And I think that'll be very fun to have in combat, and you'll have a lot of fun with this character. You'll roll a lot of dice, do a lot of damage, and things will die. So, in summary, what is the overall score of this build? So to get this number, I take the numbers from all of our damage reports and I average them together. So this character is a 174.2. This is actually better than my previous best last week, the Hedge Trimmer. That one was right about 173. And this character is far better than them at levels 13, like from level 13 and beyond. Yeah, I'm really pleased to have beaten out that build, especially even though that build had a bunch of asterisks on its damage. This one does not. The damage on this build is pretty unconditional, and you can achieve it against just about any enemy, assuming that they can't see in the darkness. That's probably the biggest thing. If you can pull that combo off, you will be golden. But if you can't, the damage is still going to be pretty good. Not quite as good, because we'll be using our bonus action to get advantage with our Fighting Spirit. But yeah, this is really good damage, and I'm super happy with where this ended up. So what would I do if I was going to take this build to level 20? I would go to Fighter 15. This gives us the next Samurai feature. I believe it's the Samurai Capstone. It's called Rapid Strikes, and what this does is once per turn, we can forego advantage on one of our attacks that had advantage to get an extra attack. Now, importantly, that extra attack will still benefit from advantage. So basically, this is just an extra attack without advantage for free. You might not Great Weapon Master on this attack, but another attack is, more damage, another chance to crit, and all of that. So we're very happy with that, and it's actually a pretty darn good feature. You'll also get another ability score increase or feat at Fighter 14. That could be maybe bumping up your Constitution or something like that, or another utility feat of your choice. But yeah, that's what I would do if I was going to take this character and this version of the build level 20. What about a heavier Warlock investment version of the build? So I would consider only taking 11 levels in Fighter and then putting more levels into Warlock to just kind of suck more power there out of our pact. And I would go to Warlock 9. Now, what this does is we would get to have 5th level spell slots. So that would mean that the damage from our smites would go up to 6d8, potentially 12d8 on a crit. We would get some more invocations, get another feat at Warlock 8. But importantly, we would also get potentially up to 5th level Warlock spells, but there's a 4th level one that you would get at Warlock 7 called Shadow of Moil that heavily obscures you. And this will let you make your attacks with advantage without having the downside of the bubble of darkness in which your allies can't see. And this is something that's really nice to have and kind of fixes that issue. And this is also, again, a very good version of the build. And if you want to go there instead of going to Fighter 15, so you'd be Fighter 11, this is, again, a very good way to do that. Now, you could actually make this character even better by using a different fighter subclass, specifically Battlemaster, because you get to toss those extra damage dice in on hit with your maneuvers. And if you were to do that, your level 6 wouldn't quite be as good because you wouldn't have the guaranteed advantage from the Fighting Spirit. But once you get Darkness and Devil's Sight going, you'd be in really good shape. So that version of the build would actually do even more damage than this one probably in the long run. So you could absolutely do Battlemaster instead of Samurai if you want. But I just thought Samurai fit the theme of this character and their story and everything so well. I thought it would be a great thing to have. And I really like the Samurai here. But again, if you want max damage, Battlemaster. Now, I want to talk a little bit about a Paladin version of this build. Because of the fact we only have one smite, essentially, on our burst round with that Eldritch Smite, because you can only use that once per turn. You could potentially get more damage out of this by using the Paladin Smite feature and getting more spell slots. So I want to talk about that a little bit and kind of what that would look like. Now, importantly on this version, you won't get to actually have the Samurai subclass. And going to level 17, these are the levels I would have by then. You'd have 2 levels in Paladin for that Divine Smite feature. You'd have 2 levels in Fighter for Action Surge. I would have 9 levels of Hexblade Warlock. This means that we'd have those 5th level spell slots. We'd have Shadow of Moil and all of that. And I would actually end up with 3 levels of Sorcerer. We need more spell slots to smite with. And this also gives us that meta magic quicken spell, as well as some other good defensive abilities. So leveling this build would be a little tricky. I think what I would do is I would start level 1 as Fighter. Then I would take the next 5 levels as Hexblade Warlock, getting that Thirsting Blade invocation to make sure that we have our extra attack. From that point, I would probably... It's a little tricky because we want the spell slots, and there's a bunch of things that we want here. I would probably take the 3 sorcerer levels next, just to kind of get that quicken spell. That would give us 2nd level non warlock spell slots, and that would get you to level 9. You'd have that quicken spell available for your Booming Blade, thanks to meta magic at Warlock 3. Then at levels 10 and 11, I would take your 2 Paladin levels. This would get you another fighting style. It would get you the smites to be able to use with your non-warlock spell slots. So you would have 3 second levels and 4 first levels at that point. You'd be a 4th level caster. Then I would take your second fighter level for Action Surge. You would be, I think that would make you a level 12 character, because 5, 3, and 2, 2. So that, yeah, you'd be a 12th level character there. And then I would take Warlock 6 at level 13. So at that point, you would have 2 attacks. You'd be able to smite on all 4 of your attacks in your burst round. One of them would be a 3rd level Eldritch Smite, and the others would be 2nd level. Well, actually, if you cast Darkness with one of your natural spell slots, you would have 2 3rd level smites and 2 2nd level smites that you could pump out. And that would be a lot of damage. And then from then on, you would take the last, let's see. These levels total 16. Okay, so you'd actually get to be a Hexblade 10. So your last 4 levels would probably be Warlock, or you could go 9 and then 4 Sorc or 3 Fighter maybe for the subclass. But that's another build for another day. I might try to do that one later, but it's kind of similar to this one. But yeah, overall, I just think the concept of being this samurai bearing this kind of cursed dark magic out of our big Odachi in our samurai-ish plate armor, it sounds like just such a super cool character, and this would be one I would be super excited to play. I'm really happy with where the damage of this character ended up, just kind of being my best one ever. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed. If you want to play this character in a campaign, or you've played something similar, let me know about it in the comments. I want to hear what you have to think. If you've got ideas for future builds that you'd like to see, please, again, share those. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate your feedback and your views, and I love making this content. So thanks again, and I will see you next time.